We should be live. We should be live. Welcome to the Smith Den, everybody. We got Sleepy here, and we're gonna talk about Autogynephilia, and Femboys. What do you have to say for yourself, Sleepy?
As a member of the transgender community, I apologize profusely.
Oh, that's a strong opening. Um, well, I wasn't expecting it to be that easy, so you can all go home now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I figure with the amount of people that are in the trans community that try to be like pink pill femboys, that it's the least I could do.
Yeah, I got experienced that a lot when I was a femboy. Um,
Yeah,
but
it seems that there's a big thing around that where it's like, well, you're a femboy, like obviously you must just be trans and in denial. Like egg culture is fundamentally a mistake on our society.
mhm. So, what else do you have to say about this? Autogynephilia. So you describe yourself as an autogynephiliac?
Not really. Like, so the problem is with autogynephilia is that there's something to that theory, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that it's fundamentally correct in the way that like Blanchard and Bailey described it originally.
The theory that all trans women have autogynephilia?
No, so
I
there's
wouldn't say
two
that.
cat
Okay.
no there's two categories, right? So if you read the original Blanchard and Bailey paper, the
Yeah.
idea is that there are two types of trans people. There's homosexual transsexuals, and then there's autogynephiliacs. So the first type are people who primarily transition because they want a better kind of man to be attracted to them. And the second type are people who essentially have a fetish that has turned into a life fixation. So somebody whose like first experiences like, buying lingerie and bras and stuff or underwear and becoming aroused by wearing those and then sort of fetishizing that experience.
Right.
And there's something to the idea that you can be attracted to yourself in certain clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of evidence to show that even like cis women have autogynephilia. But yeah, it's just the way that Blanchard and Bailey describe those theories are completely fucking bonkers.
I
Like
would say that um, my experience with the femboy stuff for me was very autogynephilia ish. It also was I wanted to be treated a certain way. Had a lot to do with that. So it's in a lot of ways it really was a lot of overlap with a lot of trans stuff.
yeah,
Um,
well, I think
but
that's where a lot of people combine the whole like, oh well, femboys are obviously just a like subculture of trans people versus the whole idea of like, well, no, femboys are just like a distinct category in and of themselves, like twinks, although like obviously there are people who do get turned on by cross-dressing or presenting more femininely, and there are certainly people who have a very particular type of fetish that drives them to transition.
well, I have all those fetishes and more. But I would say that I think my experiences with the community kind of ruined a lot of my autogynephilia. Kind of took away the fun.
Um, I mean, if it went away, then it's not really autogynephilia, is it?
Well, for
More, it's
me,
more of a paraphilia.
it went away because um, it became not fun when it was seen as a serious life thing, or
Oh,
like a
when it sort of became like when there was like a push to like transition or change everything around you, or
yeah. It kind of took the fun out of it, and now I can't see it as the same anymore. It's kind of tainted now with all this cultural, political stuff surrounding it, and now I just can't. Now it's just that whole. It's hard to really enjoy that fantasy.
yeah, I would say that would probably be really hard, especially with all the trans legislation and the whole push that where it's like, oh well, you can't be a femboy, you have to be you're obviously an egg, you can't be a tomboy, you're obviously like a trans man, like all these different
Yeah.
things. like all these comorbidities in society that like flux together and decide like, well, no, you can't just be like an extremely feminine twink who's like really slender and hot. Like you have to be a trans woman. You can't be a tomboy who's extremely butch. You have to be a trans man. You have to be on T. We've got to get you on this
Yeah.
so much.
I
It's it's so it's crushing, especially on places like Twitter where a lot of things used to be fun because like up until 16, well, yeah, 16 is when I really, really decided that I wanted it, but from like 15 to 19, I was a femboy and I used to post pictures on a board on 4chan called Sock, which led to the offspin of LGBT, which is where a lot of people might know me from. I think, or Aaron probably knows me from Twitter.
It's interesting that there are so many femboys right now, but people will talk about how tomboys are extinct.
Think that, well, I think femboy is experiencing a huge rise due to like four different factors. That's the import of Autogynephilia culture from Japan via anime. A lot of the fact that a lot of people who are in college now or exposed online happen to watch anime, and then like in certain cities there's also like maid bars. Like in Boston there's a maid bar, which is an offshoot of Oda Kanoko culture.
Hmm.
And then you have clothing brands like Trap Senpai and Tomboy X and different things like that. So
I would say there's more than that. I think, and I think this is awful this is the case in the way that this is happening, but I think femboys, young femboys like me, like when I was younger and a femboy, probably you to some extent, but I don't know you that well. We're just dudes, guys, you know, developing guys. They wanted to be sexual, they want to be objectified, and that's how you can that's how you can see it. There's not really an easy way for a straight dude to express their sexuality in a way that they're objectified. You always have to be the aggressor. You have to always earn the right to be sexual, whereas women get to be sexual and other people have to earn the right to their attention. You know, you can't like as a man, you can't like people aren't going to earn the right to be sexual with me. I have to earn the right to be sexual with them. I'm not allowed to just be sexual. So if you're a femboy, you put all this work into your physical appearance, you make yourself extra vulnerable in all these ways, but you have to do a lot of shaving. You have to do a lot, like a lot of like fucking,
oh
anorexia
yeah,
and
you're gonna have to starve yourself for a few weeks, especially if you start seeing like any amount of tummy.
oh yeah. And along those lines, I didn't know this until like after that whole phase of my life, which I really fucking is a shame. Fasting and erectile dysfunction go hand in hand. So
Yeah, they're linked.
if you are the femboy type of guy, and there's plenty of those guys these days, and you believe that you're gonna look best skinniest, so you don't eat for a day before your date, like I did for every single date, the chances of you not getting a boner go way up.
No, that's actually so. Like I've dated a couple femboys, and one of the things that it seems really like a to your point, yeah, it seems that there's a certain idea of like, oh, men have to be extremely forceful and they have to be the dominant. They can't be like in any sort of submissive or vulnerable position. And while I don't particularly like people who are submissive, it seems like there's also like a culture of like everybody seems to be really into like chastity and other stuff like that. Or even guys who are like quote unquote straight that I've dated who are like straight femboys, they also seem to like chastity or even
Hmm.
like plug play and stuff like that. So
I like chastity.
it yeah, and it seems like that's also sort of a way to express the fact that like you're not in a dominant position. You're locked away in like
Yeah,
every single sense, so you're very, very vulnerable.
that's true. Although I would say with plug play, once you go prostate, you never go backstate.
That's
Because
100% true.
yeah, because once you experience it just makes it so much easier to have an orgasm. Makes it much more powerful. Once you have an orgasm while wearing a butt plug, you're like 3 years down the line after you haven't, you'll be like, you know what? There's some itch I need to scratch. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, you're like, oh hold on, let me go ahead and dust this off and put
Yeah,
that
yeah,
back
yeah, yeah.
in. Yeah, I don't know. So like when, well, wait, you've seen pictures of me when I was like 16 because I posted that in my 10-year timeline.
Yeah,
Um,
I didn't know that was
you-
you when you were 16 when you posted it, but yeah.
yeah. Well, no, the one where I have like the ribbon on my nose, I was like 19.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so I was always like an extremely effeminate guy. I never actually saw myself as a guy. Like I always sort of
Yeah.
was like, oh well, I always saw myself as, just like the like gay kid that was like sort of like ambiguously agender somewhere. And then later on, when I was going through a lot of different things and being a femboy online, it was like, oh wait, there's a lot of people that are taking hormones and stuff like that. And so talking to a psych for 3.5 years about that, it was like, oh well, yeah, I definitely want to transition. Versus this whole idea now of like, oh my God, you're a femboy. Like, don't go through twink death. Twink death is the worst thing that can happen. Hurry, quick, like, take
Wait again.
estrogen.
Oh yeah, like you have to stay young and
Young,
yeah.
skinny, really, really in shape. Have to hit the gym every single day. Have to be 100% hairless, so you're gonna
Yeah,
have to clear
that's a lot
half
of
the
work.
night to, yeah.
That all that I don't miss. I still want to be in shape, but I want to be in shape in a different way that feels better. Um,
Well, plus you look way better with facial hair anyways.
well, thank you. Um, although I don't, I feel like eating pussy is better without a mustache for them, not for me, for them. Uh, but
Um,
women don't really
it
seem to
really
care.
it depends on the type of mustache.
So anyway, and in kindergarten, I remember fantasizing about being forced. What if they forced me to wear dresses? What if they made me go to an all-girls school and I was around girls and they made me
Yeah,
do girly things? That would be, oh my God, that would be so weird and exciting. Oh my God, and I had those fantasies when I was in elementary school. I had those fantasies when I looked at girls because I was attracted to them, and this was my weird sexual creativity rearing its head, rearing its
at
head.
at the risk of sounding like a like broken Twitter reply that I used to have, that's extremely AGP.
Oh yeah.
That actually reminds me, there was a case that was presented in the original um, reevaluate. It was a reevaluation of the Blanchard paperwork by Alice Dreger, in which there was a case study of a kid who was 4 to 6, and his father was a closeted crossdresser, and it was around like 4 to 6. Yeah, it was like 4 when he started wearing his mother's clothes, and then it was around like 6 when he started presenting like really, really hypersexual functions whenever he was in those. So like that's where the whole idea of like, oh, when it comes to like autogynephilia related to like forced feminization or like bimbofication or like sissy stuff like that, like that is like 100% classical Blanchardism, like AGP, and it's very, very, very present society.
I think yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with men, even young boys as young as kindergarten, starting to have a certain amount of jealousy for women, um, and particularly their role in the sexual exchange, being vulnerable and being objectified, is um, that comes with a lot of problems, and obviously the relationship between men and women is as it is has a lot of problems. But as it is, both sides I think can be jealous of the other in certain contexts. And in a sexual context, I think that men have a lot to be jealous of women for in an ideal setting, not in like a rape setting or you know what I mean. Like, and things are all going in the progressive way they should go. There's a lot for a man to be jealous of a woman.
Yeah, there's not as much sexual equality as people want to say that there is. Like
Yeah.
there's
Well, the problem is, so like men, like women at the worst of this dynamic get like basically enslaved for their whole life, and you know they get raped and they aren't able to consent. Um, but like if we solve those problems, the dynamic is still there. and that dynamic includes benefits that women get, that they trade their freedom for those benefits. And so if we're not going to change the dynamic and we're just going to try to alleviate the bad symptoms of the gender dynamic, then we're not really there's still an imbalance and it's still not right. And I think when you alleviate the symptoms of the problems, then there's a lot of interesting things about being a woman.
Yeah, there's also like it's really interesting you brought that up too. So within trans culture there's this idea of like passing privilege where like, oh, if you pass or like if you don't look like a man as much, like you somehow have like some sort of invisible privilege over like other people who are trans. And I've seen that used against a lot of people as like, oh well, you passed it, like you have this privilege. And I don't really see it as being like a social privilege because like like if you pass in society and somebody outs you, then you're at a far greater risk of like attack or something in regards of just being LGBT. Like statistics reflect that. But I think that in terms of like sexual dynamics, it might be more that people who see others as having passing privilege might be seeing it through the lens of, oh, well, you appear more feminine, which is my goal, and therefore I see that you must be more like sexually submissive or something. Unless if you're like a like straight up trans man, in which case that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother can of worms.
So yeah, it's honestly a lot of these types of things. There's a couple different ways I see the same issue or same psychological thing happening. It's like it's always greener on the other side kind of situation. I hear it reminds me of when people say, oh, I wish I transitioned when I was your age. And no matter how old you are, people who transitioned will always tell you they wish, if they're older than you, they wish that they transitioned when you're your age. I'm 29. I've heard people that are in their 30s say, I wish I transitioned when you're your age. When I was 21, I heard people say, I wish I transitioned when I was your age. When I was 25, I heard it. When I was 18, I heard it. I'm sure I'll hear it when I'm 40. Everybody's always going to
It's
say,
that FOMO. It's that FOMO.
what's FOMO mean?
That fear of missing out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I think that's the same thing happening with the passing privilege thing. I have made comments along those lines, talking about someone. I'm not gonna say who because I'm kind of embarrassed, but I remember on a stream I was talking to someone and they called me out on it. Someone was unhappy with they were like wanted to be a detransitioner, or they were unhappy with their life now, and they're talking about that on Twitter. And I was saying, well, I was saying it gives their argument or their statements more credibility that they do pass.
Yeah, like that's well, because like here's the thing, like running through like the full gamuts of like all of the surgeries and everything, they're still like every single day waking up and being like, I I I wish that I could reach this state on like at least like Twitter where people are like posting like selfies and being like, "Oh my God, like look how beautiful I am." Because like I'll take like a selfie and 9 times out of 10 I'll delete it because I'll be like, "Holy shit, like I so look like a fucking guy right there. Oh my God." And like surgery, bottoms, all of these things, they still don't make that like initial like worm in my brain go away. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
like there's certain people who definitely would fall under that like autogynephile like category that I see like on Twitter going like, oh, like I can't wait till I get like size F implants, which is like an actual conversation that I saw. So it's like it definitely does seem like there is some validity to the two lines, but I forget who wrote Galileo's middle finger, but in that book she specifically says that while the typology like isn't wrong, it's more that there's some gray areas to that too.
But there's always going to be gray
Yeah,
areas, I think, no matter what lens you do. Because in psychology, even when you are right, the fact that you've learned a new psychological thing, now that you've put it into writing, people reading that now changes it in itself. But also, like, as far as we're categorizing or diagnosing things, there's no perfect way to do it, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, well, especially because the original test was like 4 questions for each one, and
mm-hmm,
it's like not been updated since '83 was the last time it was published.
mm-hmm,
So like when so if you're a homosexual, transsexual, like you can never touch a computer because back when it was written, like those were considered to be like extremely manly things.
mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, you can't be bisexual in any sort of way. Like so, like based off of like, there's one question that I'll get a mark on in terms of like falling into like HSTS, and because I don't fully meet all of the requirements, because obviously like it's 2023, I'm pretty sure. I touch a computer every day. Like
Mm-hmm.
because of that, like I'd be considered an autogynephile transsexual.
Yeah, I'm wearing women's leggings right now. I'm wearing I think they just look fine on me. And I'm wearing
I mean, they
this is
look.
obviously a woman's jacket if you really think about it. But uh yeah, I wouldn't wear this out because the shoulders won't fit, but it's just comfortable and I would needed something warm. Um
I mean,
the
have you considered wearing that and like doing a stream and changing your name to a pimp named Smith?
yeah. I have not. But I have considered putting this on my shoulders and starting the stream just now.
I
And
mean, it looks good.
you've made me consider taking my pimp hand out of retirement. So
Fucker, you at least get a cane with Smith engraved in the side.
I
That'd
got
be
I
awesome.
got a plastic mallet.
Pimp mallet.
What was I saying? Oh, but just like um, going through a femboy phase where people sort of were encouraging me to be trans. I even wanted to take hormones for a while, and at the height of that, incorporating a lot of um, I uh, I destroyed the feminine mystique in myself. I no longer have any feminine mystique whatsoever. Women are just shitting, pissing, vomiting monsters, just like men in my mind, and that has destroyed a lot of my autogynephilia. I think the feminine mystique, as it's a term in feminism, uh, I think it's responsible for autogynephilia in a lot of ways.
That's kind of like a blinder, you can't see behind the shade if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, well, like
Like
what
there's
did
some sort of like secret like hidden thing where like women have like all this
yeah
like ability to like be so sensual and men have to
what are they
just
doing
sort
in
of
the
be blunt
bathroom?
objects.
They're so what are they? Oh, if only
Yeah,
we
what are
could
they
look
doing
at
in the
them in
bathroom?
there.
Why are they in so many groups? Why does it take so long to do this? Why does it like et cetera, et cetera? Versus like men, they just have to be blunt objects.
Yeah, you could have just imagined like a woman just tasting her own pussy juice and be like, mmm. Oh. I see you don't have the feminine mystique.
No. Although, okay, so if you were to replace that with a dude and cum, I would totally be down for
To
that.
me, it's the same fucking thing.
Like,
Um,
I've always liked that. Like,
for me,
I've always liked guys so much more. Like, I've I've never like when I was a kid, it was like let's see, like the first time like I ever considered myself like any sort of like sexual being was probably like around like 11 or 12. And even then it was like when it was like, oh my God, like this guy in my class is like extremely hot.
hmm,
Versus like I know a lot of people who were like, oh yeah, like guys were kind of okay, but like I've dated girls for like years and years and years. Like I've had like 4 or 5 like ex-girlfriends and now they're just like, well, but I just want like guys now. And so it's like, okay, like on that hand, like yeah, like you could be bisexual, like it's completely fine. But then you see people who are now like trying to like force that into themselves. Like
Oh
you'll see
yeah.
people try to make like excuses and be like, well, like I think that once I do this, this, and this, like my sexual orientation will completely flip and then I can do this.
Mm.
When there's like that seems more in line with the like paraphilia of autogynephilia, where it's like, okay,
Yeah.
so you need the enforcement of a man to like help enforce the fetishization of like yourself as a feminine being versus like
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
just
Yeah.
liking men.
I don't feel that particular thing, but I've definitely made myself way more gay through masturbation and porn use. I'm able to be full fledged gay if a woman is watching. And if a woman is not watching, then I can't do it. It has to be, but I have to. It has to be if a woman is watching. She's the one I'm really pleasing if I'm going gay.
So you want her to live kind of vicariously through you.
I want to live vicariously through her, living vicariously through me.
Oh my God, sexual feedback loop.
Yeah. But yeah, you can go far. So I think that's kind of straight, honestly. Um, you can disagree. It depends on how you define it. Um,
I mean,
depends on how
if
you
you're
define
doing
it.
it to please a woman, I would say that that's straight.
Yeah, but it's also gay.
I mean, you're doing something that is, yeah, you're doing something inherently homosexual to get gratification because you're pleasing a woman as well. And
Yeah.
eh,
But like
bisexual maybe.
the mind of the man involved, like I don't want him to be a human, but I want the woman to be a human.
Yeah, you want to humanize her, but you just want him to be a blunt object, like society has always said.
I guess so. I guess so. Maybe I'd be more gay if we allowed men to be vulnerable and I could imagine men in my sexual imagination more like that.
Maybe there's definitely something to the whole no, there's something to the idea that like pushing this whole notion of like suck it up, walk it off, that like everybody's sort of taught as like a man, that it's really done so much emotional harm to like men in terms of like sexuality and just society in general.
Yeah. How are you a fan of Sam Hyde?
I am a fan of Sam
I am
Hyde.
also a fan of Sam Hyde, but I would say he absolutely embodies that though.
Yeah, well, Sam Hyde, like, I swear to God, Sam Hyde could step on a fucking landmine and then just be like, whatever, I'm gonna walk it off.
Yeah.
Sam Hyde is the embodiment of toxic masculinity, and also Sam Hyde banged a tranny, so I think that that's cool.
Oh, so you're really you're not uh you're not out of the running.
Yeah, I'm not, but I think that also too, and like, I think Sam Hyde kind of explains like there was like this certain idea of like, oh well, you have to be like a very soft, like you have to be like a soft boy, like you can't like the whole like idea of like, oh well, you need to like be soft, you need to be more emotionally vulnerable. There was a big push for that, especially on like YouTube, so like with the rise of like H Bomber guy and stuff like that,
Hmm.
like there was, and like breadtube and everything else, there's like this whole push of like, oh well, you need to be softer, be more vulnerable, like not have like all of these toxic masculine things. And a lot of toxic masculine things are extremely sexy, at least for somebody who's looking for like somebody who's super masculine. So I
Yeah.
think that the whole idea of like, well, boys stop being so angry, boys stop doing this, boys stop doing that. I think that really led to the rise of like Sam Hyde on YouTube and like eventually on Adult Swim before like Tim Heidecker ruined world peace.
Yeah. I would say it created the dichotomy of Sam Hyde and Femboys. Sam Hyde is the Sith to the Jedi Council of Femboys for sure.
Which is very weird because if you ever watch the iDubbbz documentary, he surrounds himself with lots of extremely feminine like young men.
Yeah, I wonder about that.
Like what the person that did all the CG or did all like the renders for his NFT card game training was just a guy back when iDubbbz made the documentary.
Yeah.
Like, hey, no, Hyde's cool. Hyde's fucking awesome. And like
So
100%, I bet he'd bang a femboy.
so why is this split not happening with women? So like with men, we've got this split where even you're gonna either a hyper masculine, you're gonna be ignorant and just whatever, not paying attention to the fucking discourse bullshit. There's your perfect place to be. Or you got to be a femboy. But you got the split. You got the hyper masculine, you got the femboy. Well, with women, why is it not that there are tomboys and what is the opposite of a tomboy? Who's
Like a
like,
princess.
yeah, like I'm thinking maybe like princess, super feminine, not a princess because that's too idealistic. I'm talking about like a real person, like Sam Hyde's a real person in a way. I'm thinking like, um,
So you're thinking like so like
I'm
why
thinking of
isn't
an OnlyFans girl, the top of the top. Who's that one? Bella Delphine. So, yeah, so
Belle Delphine the
yeah,
e-girl?
yeah. So
I
so
mean,
you got Belle Delphine and you got if Belle Delphine can be the super feminine, which I think in our culture in a way she is,
I
and
mean
then you
there's
tomboys, but you don't got tomboys.
yeah, like what for a while I used to say that was I used to use Elliot Page as an example of that, but then Elliot Page transitioned, so
Yeah.
um I mean there's a few different things. So like you like I mean hell, take a look at Law and Order SVU. Like you can have what's her name? Marissa Hardigan, who plays Benson. I would say is fairly butch. Acts more like one of the guys, despite having like some emotional insights into like just the whole like matriarchal insights of like, oh, I'm going to like empathize with you a little bit. But definitely more of more of like an icon in terms of like being like a more like butch presenting person versus like even the person that plays what's the blonde girl's name on Law and Order
No
SVU?
idea.
But yeah, she's more of the embodiment of like the like oh like she's the person that like you would expect to like be the cop that would like have like an OnlyFans or something. And
Hmm.
I feel like there are different depictions of like oh well you can be like a tough as nails woman who's like into the same stuff as the guys are into, but it's getting more and more rare. Like there's like the last thing that you sort of had was like the daughter on like the Connors.
I feel like
I don't
and
know.
you know what? I
It's
have no
so hard
idea.
to think of these examples because there are none.
It's like to be a tomboy means that you're going to sacrifice all the benefits of being a woman, all the subtle benefits of being a woman, and get none of the benefits of being a man. In
Yeah,
a way,
you're not really getting any sort of like male privilege
right?
from that. You're
But
just giving up sort of
femboys do kind of get some free female privilege.
yeah, like and they're definitely giving up a lot of their male privilege that they see,
Yep,
especially like
they're
the
getting something
ultra
back
passing
though.
ones.
They're getting
Yeah,
something
they're
back though. And the
in terms of the sexual
tomboys,
marketplace, they definitely are.
yes. Yeah, people don't believe me when I say that I got laid a lot as a femboy. Like they're like, "What? Really?" Like, yeah.
No, okay, so like women, like here's the thing, like I had like a really like super bad relationship and like after that it's like I felt extremely uncomfortable. Yet like it for some reason it seemed easier to like because like I used to hang out almost like after that I hung out exclusively like with my like friend who's like female, and then I started hanging out with my friend who was a femboy, and it sort of felt like the same dynamic. Like it sort of felt like, oh, like you can still have that like emotional weakness there
Hmm.
versus like.
Not
So I
weakness,
think that there's this, yeah, there's like this
vulnerability.
notion that like, yeah, there's a notion that like, oh, if you're with a femboy, there's more of like a feminine vulnerability than
Yeah,
with your when you're with a man. You just have sort of like a blunt instrument there who's gonna dick you down real hard and then like leave.
yeah. And tomboys, I think the reason I'm putting that dichotomy as OnlyFans versus tomboys, which there's plenty of like gender queer women and stuff on OnlyFans. But what I'm talking about is tomboys.
Yeah, tomboys explicitly like there's not re
Yeah.
like that's not really like a fad
The
on
reason that I'm
Twitter
putting
or
it
Instagram or anything.
the reason I'm putting that as a dichotomy is I think the hypersexualization of women is in itself a short-term empowerment. I think it's a long-term enslavement. You enslave yourself to a man, but in the short term, like you have the pick of the litter of the men. If you really play into it, you become the OnlyFans girl. Your sexuality is now your source of income. It's kind of awful, but it is an empowerment in such a way. And I think that for women, they just see that as a horror and they want to escape that. And being a tomboy really is like saying, I'm going to get rid of all the benefits that I could get from that, but I'm not going to go all the way so that I get any of the benefits of being like a man. So just kind of getting rid of any benefit you really got. And you're still probably going to have a lot of the negative effects of most of the negative effects of being a woman still. Um, so
Yeah, well, I know a few different like butch femmes, like butch women who are lesbians who get that in society. Like especially like I used to work at a sex shop. Like one of the things that was always really prevalent was that customers would always hit on the like more like for lack of a better word, and that's where like I kind of had like the e-girl aesthetic, like with the hair dye and everything else all the time. Because in that sort of industry, the whole idea is like you make yourself as sexually appealing as possible, hoping that somebody will either like buy something or ask you out on a date or like ask you like for your number, maybe ask you like
mhm.
to like go have sex. And then when you had a lot of the lesbians that would come in who were extremely butch, like you would see them and then you would see like their partners that they were with like getting hit on by like somebody else, but they were rarely the ones who were getting hit on. And they were rarely the ones who were like even noticed. And like they were actually the best customers and they're like really cool to talk to. And I love them. But also just sort of they're just sort of seen by society as like some sort of like vague object of gender that's there. They're not really seen as like, oh well that's a woman right there. Like
You know what?
that's somebody that
They
I
might
wanna.
even exist more than we think they do, but we don't even pay attention.
Yeah, like I mean that, or we might just go like, oh well, like maybe that's like a trans guy now because like that seems to be the new like push. It's like, oh,
Mm,
you're like a girl that's like into like cars or something. Like, are you sure you're not like trans?
yeah. Woman that wears a trucker hat.
Yeah. Wear a trucker hat. Oh, you're a trans. You're a trans dude.
Yeah.
Guy in a dress. Oh, you're obviously a trans woman.
No makeup, wears a trucker hat, has a pull-up bar in her apartment. Yeah. Those exist. They're rare though.
I mean, there's like a few. I've seen a lot of them on the South Side. And they actually just opened a new lesbian bar in Alston, so
I'm
I'm
not talking about
pretty sure.
lesbians. I'm
Yeah.
as a man, I don't give a shit about no lesbians right now. Well, like when I'm thinking, uh,
Oh,
there's
you're looking for the straight ones.
yeah.
Looking for the straight tomboys. I don't know. I have to go to Michigan or something for that.
Mm.
I'm I'm sure that there's like a lot of people in small towns who are like severely
Oh yeah.
underrepresented on the internet.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right about that. Um. Yeah.
It's like hell, like even big fem like even all of the big femboy accounts like on Twitter, they're all either in their state's capital or in like the largest like
Yeah.
metropolitan areas in the world.
Yeah. You can often meet. I found, um, on Tinder, if you're traveling through rural areas and stuff, less populated areas, not necessarily your rural suburb areas, you'll you'll match with people that are the people you're actually looking for because those people are like, they're actually there, you know, they're not,
Versus
they're lonely
versus like
too.
if you open so like if you're in like the middle of Ohio and you're like north of Columbus where there's like nothing, like barely a cell signal, you're probably going to match with somebody that wants to have a full conversation with you before like just engaging and like, oh, well, like want to come and suck my dick because like I've never used Tinder before. Like I've always used Grindr. Versus like now, it's like, oh, okay, Boston, cool. Um like I'll have like 500, 600 views, but all of the messages are just going to be like pictures. Like there are maybe like two people who just moved here for college that I started talking to that have no interest in like just like one-off hookups. They just want to like be friends and like chill and play Titanfall and shit versus
I
having
I
300
find
for a month
I find
messages of pictures.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. I see sucking a dick as a way to get to the heart. You suck out the heart through the dick. Because because so for me, and way I don't even try. It's not like I try to do this with dates on Tinder and stuff, and in general dates. If it's explicitly a date, my goal is to be as vulnerable as I possibly can, and to discover if we're compatible. And um, I find that the only way to really get there ends up being like as intimate as you can be, and it just ends up in sex. Just become vulnerable enough that it gets there. There's no like expectation or pressure. It's just the vulnerability leads to sex.
I could see that. I don't know. For me it's more like I don't want to have I've done the whole like random like have sex all of the time type thing. So like to me being more like vulnerable, especially somebody that's like grown up in New York and like basically had random hookups every single night. Like my idea of being vulnerable is sitting with somebody and talking with them and like opening up
Sure.
because I think that there's something that once you like initiate a date and start going like, okay, this is going to be serious. It's not going to be like just a hookup. It might lead to something super long term. I feel like you should sit and talk with them, and I think that you should show them like, because on dates everybody's so used to
Restraint.
like, oh, restraint, and also like I need to like put on like this idealized version of myself versus like when you go on a date, I feel like you should show everybody the full gamut of like who you are. You should show
Yeah.
them like the worst that
Yeah.
you will be and the best.
You get naked and you're like, this is a scar that I have here. Look at this. And you do that kind of thing. You turn the light on. Uh, Someone in my chat said, "Tomboys, not lesbians. We do exist, and yeah, a countryside upbringing for sure plays a part." Yeah, I think they probably do exist, but you know what? They don't exist the way a lot of men want them to exist, because a lot of men want them to still be a kind of sex object kind of thing. They want Misty from Pokemon. That's the tomboy that the most men want.
They want
You,
they want a 14-year-old girl? What?
no, I mean, I don't mean 14-year-old girl. I mean, they want like, she's a tomboy, but she's
Well,
also
yeah,
wearing
she's
short
she's got the
shorts.
yeah, they want the oh, she's got suspenders, but she's wearing short shorts. And yeah, she's got short hair, but oh, it's cute.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
the
But she's
oh,
not
she's got
boy.
short hair
Yeah.
because it's been like burnt out.
Yeah, and I'm not saying 14. No.
I know.
Okay.
Hey, you are from the Mr. Girl community.
Yeah.
You know that could have been it could have been a thing. The sexualization of women via Pokemon.
Via
Like
Pokemon,
how
Vaporeon.
Pokemon turned a generation into pedophiles by like making them lust after James or something.
Huh. I don't know. No,
We'd
I
have
don't
to
think
bring
so.
Aaron in on that conversation
I don't think so.
because I feel like Aaron would have a strong opinion on James.
Oh yeah. Well, James is great. Jessie. Jessie is the tomboy. Except she's still hyper feminized. She still puts all the work into her appearance, but she has the personality of the tomboy. She's the one in charge. She's calling all the shots. He's looking up to her like she's a fucking god. You know what I mean? She's
And
the
then
man.
on the flip side, every single time that they put on a disguise, James is always the one in a more feminine role, taking on the more feminine, taking on the more womanly roles in every single scheme that they have. Like, oh, going to try to win like a surf contest. Well, James is the one in the bikini,
Mm-hmm.
and Jesse's the one who's extremely hypermasculinized and calling all the shots. James is the
she's
submissive in that
still
relationship.
she's still sexualized. She's always wearing a short skirt and like knee highs and shit. And she's like always like her makeup's on point and like her she fucking spent
Her
an hour on
hair's
her
on
hair.
point too.
Yeah. So she is both the best of both worlds. I think the femboy that not fem the tomboy that men want is the one that's the guy and does all the beauty shit. They want both. You gotta if you want that tomboy, you gotta give up. You have to have the girl in the trucker hat with no makeup and pull up bar in her fucking apartment. If you want that,
Yeah, that's you. I wonder. I'm sure that they exist, but it's so like hyper idealized because it's a lot easier to like, especially in this day and age where you're just like, okay, so I'm going to just throw away like all of the like insights that I've had and like dress like the sluttiest slut known since like Slutville, and then it's really hard to like pull off like an extremely like butch but cute look. Like that's kind of what I was going for in part because I've like completely destroyed my hair from dyeing it so much.
mm-hmm.
But I feel like that doesn't help like my case at all. And
You know
like I've
why?
always been fine with that.
Because the butch but cute look, the cuteness just comes from being young.
True. And when you're like sitting here pushing the precipice of like 28, like holy fuck.
Yeah.
And then of course you get people that on Twitter that are like, oh well, like I wish I would have transitioned when I was your age. It's like I transitioned at 22. Right?
Mm-hmm. Are those
Wait.
birds in that cage?
There's one bird, but not currently in the cage.
I was wondering
Like,
why it was so quiet.
yeah, normally he's just chilling out somewhere else in the house or free flying.
Cool. What is it? Aaron said best Pokemon. James is base as fuck. Best Pokemon. We've got our tomboy said can't speak in general, but sex is not a main preoccupation
Preoccupation?
/ interest for a tomboy, and for sure don't give a f about men's expectations. Well, you know what? I do want a tomboy that wants to fuck. Okay, because well, there's nothing wrong with that, and I'm sure they exist. She doesn't have to. She doesn't have to wear makeup. Okay, but she does have to wanna fuck. Okay, like a human.
Beth, we need to take you to Virginia. We need to take you like
Yeah,
far out, like near the Ohio River.
they exist. I know they do. Um, because I'm imagining them. I know who they are. Jesse. This is Aaron. Jesse, the protective butch to James, vulnerable femboy. I transitioned at 31. I'm the queen of the trans boomers. Aaron, you're not even 31. um, I had a pull-up bar and a boxing sack hanging from my ceiling. Installed them myself. This is the tomboy. James was busty as
Base.
hell in that one episode. That's true. That's true.
Yeah, no, James was mogging Misty in that episode. The one where they're at
Mogging.
the
What
pool.
does mogging mean?
So like mogging is kind of like it's kind of like a beauty slash been like a lot of terms on trans Twitter are either originated from like beauty YouTube or from like femboy slash trap culture. And then we're sort of like backported back to like trans culture. So like mogging is when like you look really good and you're like making like another like trans woman jealous and like to like a certain extent. So
I
like
see.
if you're like, holy shit, that person mogs me, like that's generally like a compliment of like they look good. Or
Clark
at
Cunt,
least
a woman that's not afraid to get dirty in more ways than one.
I mean there's a lot of women that are like that.
Yeah. Um, it's about, yes, we exist. Not caring about men's expectations uh, doesn't mean we want to fuck. It's two different things. Back to sleep. Just a testimony. We exist. All right, you exist. I believe you. Go to sleep and have a good night. Uh, that episode got banned.
Oh
Yeah, it
yeah,
did.
the pull episode, yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It showed up on Toonami though. So
Yeah, I think I remember seeing it. It's because of the boobs, I think.
yeah, there's a few episodes like that that got cut. Like the Safari Zone got cut.
Mm-hmm. Safari Zone.
Apparently it gave like a bunch of kids seizures or something.
Oh no, that's the Lavender Town soundtrack theme. Lavender.
Oh, the Lavender Town Syndrome. No, that's from the
Yeah.
game. Like, there was an episode of the anime in the first season called Safari Zone, where they go into the Safari Zone.
Hmm.
That episode got banned because it gave like a bunch of kids in Japan seizures when they watched it. Because they're like when they did like the transition into the Safari Zone,
Hmm.
it was like I think there was like a shitload of like flashing lights and stuff.
Wow. The
But yeah, the
Porygon.
Lavender Town Syndrome was like
That
a
was fake. Someone says that was
yeah
fake.
yeah it was a creepy pasta.
Yeah. Well, I liked the Lavender Town music.
It's really good.
Um,
Oh
Electric
wait,
Soldier Porygon.
yeah, I was just about to say it wasn't Safari Zone, it was Porygon.
Ah, that makes a lot more sense. Okay, so I personally, I think I honestly feel like if we're talking about autogynephilia, I think autogynephilia is I think hating your gender and hating yourself so that you'd only feel happy if you transitioned uh, is I don't believe that can possibly be an internal experience. I think that's pushed onto you by society, and for like that doesn't change like what it is. I like it doesn't. It's not like you can just change society with the snap of your fingers. Um, but I feel like that's unfair to trans people to levy all that burden onto them when I feel like it's the fault goes on all of our shoulders. But with autogynephilia, I feel like that is just like, okay, that's on you. So you like for me, like that's honestly more um, logical of a person to transition.
Yeah, like so in general, like if somebody has like gender dysphoria due to the fact that they like have some sort of condition, like I really wish that somebody would actually release these studies because there were a lot of studies in the 90s that were done on like brain chemistry, brain physiology, different things like that, where it was like, okay, so we're recognizing that there is a distinct difference between people who are like transsexual and they have this type, they have like the same, like in an MRI, the brain more approximates that of like a cis female. And there was a group recently that was like, oh, well, we're going to release a study that shows that like there's a distinct reason as to why like gender dysphoria and like transgender people exist, et cetera, et cetera. And they got sort of silenced into not publishing the study, which I feel is a fucking horrible thing. I feel like you should never like go out and silence like science in the name of like political correctness. That's really fucking stupid to do. But when it comes to being autogynephilic and being like, oh well, I really like the way that this bra and panties like made me come like way better. I feel like that is something in which we should sort of take counseling for and talk to people about and be like, it's okay to like have a sexual fetish. Like just because you're like doing something that's like turning you on and like, you have extremely vivid sexual fantasies and it's allowing you to live a certain way. Like I don't feel like we should like push the idea that you need to transition on it. Although
No,
if they
no.
want to, I feel like they absolutely should, but like I feel it's something that we should sit down and talk to people about and be like sexual like kinks and fantasies and fetishizations are completely okay.
Right. Well, I think, the transition for that would turn it, like, it would take away all the sexuality out of it, because it would turn into all the monotony of your everyday life, and it would suck all the sexiness out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe.
Maybe.
Does
Maybe
Bruce
not.
Jenner really? Yeah, does Bruce Jenner really feel any less like sexual? Yeah,
I
like
don't know.
to themselves?
I don't know.
Or Caitlyn Jenner? Yeah, canceled for dead naming somebody who's an Olympic athlete.
I know with something like chastity, which is like a you can do over a long period of time, in the moments when you're not horny, it's horrific.
Well, I mean, in the moments when you're not horny, all sex is horrific.
Right, but if you're doing something 21st, so if you change your body for a sexual reason, then the moments when you're not horny might be horrific. And
Yeah, but
that's what I'm
and then
saying.
there's yeah, but when it comes to like the like when it comes to like a fetish that becomes like a paraphilia where it evolves from being like a fetish and goes to like an extreme fixation,
Hmm.
almost like an OCD like fixation. And then when you add in like different sorts of attitudes, like when you add in like certain things, like so there's a fairly prominent like left-wing uh YouTuber who started taking testosterone because they wanted to be a trans man, then went off of it and then started experiencing like extreme gender dysphoria based off of the fact that they were getting more masculinized features. So, like, I think that there's a certain argument to be made that like once you start doing these things, like you can almost enforce like gender dysphoria onto yourself. Like you can like at least in the example of that person, like they forced themselves to go through dysphoria, although it was dysphoria for the fact that they changed their body from being more feminine to more masculine. And so they wanted to get that back.
Something I wanted to say before, which you're reminding me of now, is for me, the true happiness and comfort with my body has never come from changing my body. When I was a femboy, I would change my body in a lot of ways. I would, would eat, and I would, shave all my body hair, and spend time on my fucking hair and shit. Spend a lot of time. That always made me feel like miserable, but it wasn't until I started just accepting my body for how it is, and then still feeling good about it. Like, just then, now that feels really good. Uh, to be just without any effort at my worst, to feel sexy at my worst. Now that's good. When you have to spend 4 hours a day to feel sexy, versus when you just feel sexy when you're taking a shit. That's night and day. Those are two really different things. And women, I think, might have difficulty with that in general. Um, but I want women to be able to be sexy at their worst too.
Yeah. Um, and that's the other thing too, is like there's always the enforcement of like, well, like you have like all of these beauty standards in life that like you have to live up to like as a woman or like even like as an extremely effeminate twink. Like you have to like have these sort of set roles, and you have to have these like there's set expectations. Like if you meet a twink and like they have like an extremely hairy chest and like stomach, that's automatically going to like set a different tone in terms of like a sexual like meeting than it would the expectation of like, oh, like a completely hairless twink. So like
Mm,
all of these sort of things, I feel like the whole idea of like, well, we enforce these notions on ourselves and then we enforce like all these beauty standards, and that makes other people dwell, like that makes you dwell on all of these things. So we sort of go, okay, I need to look like this, I need to look like this, I need to look like this, I need to lose like 20 pounds, I need to like have my eyes, my like eyeliner done a certain way, I need to like be completely like all of these things as society that we push on each other by using all of the labels that we have. I feel like it's a contributing factor into like just not waking up and like being like, damn, like I'm kind of hot, like in
yeah,
your own skin, because you'll
yeah,
look down and you'll be like, oh wait, I have this imperfection here, i'm not
yeah. So
I'm
if you're
not.
trans, how could you ever feel like that?
That's a good question. I'll let you know when I do.
Well, I mean, I don't mean that to be like, accusatory. I'm just like,
Oh
I
no.
feel like you're giving that up if you transition because you're changing so much about yourself.
So for me, the whole like impetus to transition was more not the fact that I felt that I was like ugly as a man or anything like that. Because like I will say this, like I was a pretty cute twink, but it was
Mm-hmm.
more like, and I feel like I'm more in like a weird category because I was born with like it's called Klein filters. So I was born XXY.
Hmm.
And I've always sort of had like a lot of estrogen in my body like to begin with from that. So it was, I don't know if maybe that's what was driving me to be like, well, I don't feel at all like I'm a man whatsoever. I don't feel like this. I'm attracted to men. I always take a more submissive role in any relationship. I always have like sort of like a matriarchal like protection over all of my friends. Like all of these varying things, plus the whole idea that like I could not stand like having the set of genitals that I was like uh, like had at birth. I couldn't like really like do anything with those during like sex. I felt extremely uncomfortable just like
Hmm.
waking up and going and taking a shower, like to the point where like tucking became like a super common thing for me in high school.
Wow.
And yeah, so I feel like when it comes to gender dysphoria, it's more we do these things to alleviate a lot of the symptoms that are caused, because when you transition, like you're doing this to alleviate the symptoms that are wrong with you because you have gender dysphoria, which is like diagnosably a mental disorder, versus you're doing this because you want to coom better.
I I feel more supportive of people doing it because they want to coom better.
I guess. Then again,
Because it's not because I feel like it's not your fault. I don't believe that you were born to hate your genitals. I feel like that's just you can only like if you were raised in a vacuum you wouldn't feel that way. Like I think that you could only feel that way based on how other people treat you, how you what you the things you get from society, and how you want to be treated. I went to art school, and when I was a femboy, when I wanted to be a woman, when I saw women being treated a certain way, 70% women in art school, and I saw the way that they were advancing in life, and I was like, what am I gonna do? Like, and I'm like, I want to be one of them. I don't want to be left out. Also, there'd be like groups of like women that are like, no boys allowed, and that kind of thing. I just wanted to be one, like, just like everybody else. I wanted to, and that impacted me a lot, and it made me hate being a man. And it wasn't just that, just society in general lately. But I don't blame. I don't think I should blame myself or change myself for that. I'm really glad that I didn't. I'm glad that my dad gave me some pushback. He told me not to take the hormones, and yeah, I'm glad that I didn't because since stopped feeling that way.
Yeah. Well, okay, so back when I started transition, you had to go basically 2 years talking to a psych before you could even get meds.
Hmm.
Like the W path regulation at the time was, well, you can't just walk in and then walk out like one stop shop. You have to
Hmm.
like sit there, talk to a psych, go through like all these different evaluations. So, like it it sounds weird whenever I tell like other trans people this, but I feel like it shouldn't sound weird because I feel like deep down, like everybody else should probably feel the same way. Like, if there was a pill that you could take that would get rid of dysphoria and you would just have to live as a man,
Hmm.
I would take that pill versus like alleviating symptoms because like there's something like there's something like we do not currently understand that has made my brain a certain way or is like fucked with my body chemistry to the point where like I feel the need to like either like self roadblocks or like transition. Like that was the main impetus. And I feel like even if I was raised in a vacuum without seeing that without seeing like if there's a complete vacuum, say we return to Monkey, right?
Hmm.
And there were no social roles for men or women. It was like a complete social Darwinist, like everyone for themselves, etc. I feel like there would still be a part of me that was deeply uncomfortable because I'm not uncomfortable with the social role that I had. I was uncomfortable with the fact that whenever I would look down, I would cry for hours. Like even as an early teenager. Like the worst day of my life happened when I got an erection for the first time.
Hmm.
And like I mean that's like hyperbolic. Like there's been way worse things that have happened in my life, but in terms of like the most like the worst thing that I could imagine that's not like extremely abusive in my life would be like looking down and seeing that I had an erection because it was like
Well, it clearly had a
well,
big impact on you.
yeah, it's like well that's not how it is for my twin. That's not how it is for other two sisters because like I have a twin sister, then I have two older sisters. It's like that's not how it is for any of them. It's not how it is. Like that's not how it's supposed to be. Like I don't want this. I don't want this at all. Like my brain just like fundamentally like blue screened.
Someone said that they've been canceled for saying this, but they think some waiting time is probably a good idea.
It's 100% a good idea. I feel like you should probably talk to somebody.
I completely agree. When I wanted to transition, though, I would have disagreed, and the reason being is the thing we were talking about earlier. Everybody wishes they did it earlier.
Yeah, the fear
Everybody,
of missing out. You don't want to
yeah,
you have that Peter Pan syndrome. You want to be young and nubile and
yeah,
virile forever.
but um,
Which
yeah,
is kind of sad because I see a lot of femboys transitioning now on Twitter for that like exact same reason because they feel like I feel like trans Twitter and a lot of like trans people in general sell HRT, especially like especially feminine cross-sex hormones, as being like a fountain of youth. Like you'll hear somebody be like, "Oh well, to avoid twink death, just start taking estrogen." And there's a lot of femboys that I see that are like now starting like estrogen monotherapies or things like that. And it's like, well, I can like, but you're still like fundamentally a male, and you're going to like do something so drastic as to destroy your fertility and all of these other side effects when you just want to look young. Like the
yeah,
standards that we're pushing at this point in terms of how like the TikTokification of people younger than us has gotten to the point where we're willing to like destroy our bodies for a so-called fountain of youth.
yeah.
And I think there should be I think like ah, sorry, that was like a weird hit. Um I think that we should wait and have people talk to psychologists and talk to people because I feel like a lot of that is probably like some sort of undiagnosed like body dysmorphia, not like a dysphoria.
Yeah.
Especially among the femboy community where you're
Well,
like,
it's not
well,
just it's not just body. So with the femboy community, to get the benefits of being a femboy, because femboys, like we're saying, have the benefit a lot of these benefits of being a woman, and they don't want to live like a man. They want to have these feminine lifestyle options, and to do that, you have to be young. You have to look young, and once you get to a certain age as a man, nobody gives a fuck about you at all. um, Either you're making money so that other people can benefit and then they'll give a fuck about you so you can earn their love and their affection, or you can go fuck off. And I think that's the thing that we're really, really, really trying to escape.
yeah, it's you like I would say it's like Peter Pan syndrome. They want to say like, oh well, they want to like go to Neverland and like live with the Lost Boys forever because in society they like it is exactly like you said. It's after you hit like 28, 29. At that point, well, it's like why aren't you like married? Why aren't you having a job? Why aren't you like aged out? Why haven't you turned into a bear? Why haven't you done XYZ, right?
Right. Someone said, Smith, I think if you believe that society is the only reason for dysphoria, you kind of have to believe that men and women are the same in nature. I do. I think that men get more muscle, and I think testosterone makes you more aggressive, while estrogen makes you more agreeable. And aside from those things, and maybe there's like a couple other things, like psychologically, um, like spatial, like organization. Like men tend to be better at packing like shit into a trunk. But like, who cares? Like, that's the only difference, really. Like,
I don't know. Women, when tested, are much better Tetris players than men.
ooh,
So
all right, all right, all right. So maybe not. And a lot of
I,
that is going to be also influenced by society too. Just the things we've done in our lives and stuff. So I don't think it really means it much. But I do think that just the hormones themselves cause some differences, and that's testosterone makes you more assertive, and estrogen is going to make you more agreeable. It's the only real thing I think is the main difference, honestly. All this Evo psych stuff, about like sexuality and stuff, I find it to be bullshit. There's just as much science that contradicts it. Um, I went over it with some people in my Discord. The idea that, like, women are going to have a different attitude about sex because of their role in sexual reproduction actually makes no sense mathematically. But I do think there's a
could you give me 1 second here?
yeah, go ahead, whatever. What do you need? Let's see. I used to think the same thing, but after doing some research, I don't think it's very realistic. I do. I think all that Evo psych stuff is mostly bullshit. Do you have any examples? Because even if it wasn't mostly bullshit, the Evo psych stuff, to be a man and want to have the Evo psych evolutionary psychology, like change yourself in such a way that you meet those standards or whatever, really, what that comes at the expense, like, when you I'm saying that you're changing yourself because you don't like who you are and how you fit into society and the role you play in it, even if that role in society is determined by evolutionary psychology, or is set in stone. You are unhappy with that place you've been given, even if that was true. And it's not fair to be unhappy with that. We should all be treated or be allowed to be like it's all bell curves anyways with social learning or not. There are women that are better than men at the most manly things, and men that are better than women at the most feminine things. So uh, everyone should be treated as a special snowflake. And femboys shouldn't have to shave their legs to be able to be sexual objects. And um, women shouldn't have to seek empowerment through hyper objectifying themselves, and they shouldn't have to they shouldn't have to cut their breasts off in order to um, reject the hyper objectification that they are sentenced to by birth from being a woman. And I think you should be able to define how much you want to objectify yourself. And I don't think you should have to change your body in order to do that. Just change how you behave. Because it shouldn't be inherent to being a woman, and it shouldn't be inherent to being a man. That's what I believe. Let me see. My name is Fart Get Smart. My name is Fart Get Smart. This lady get pated, faded, we made it. I said to forget it. Monkey Target, fun Walmart, hot cross buns, bleed on a cock, drink pot, smoke shots, happy on the clap, slapping nipples, tickle fat. My nana is on Percocet, I'm drunk, place bets, big money on my head, blood in the tool shed. Sanity, pills, piss, we know the drill, kiss me, kill me. Bee, sneeze, ice cream, I believe who I see. Okay.
I came back and what was this?
I was rapping.
Busting out some
I
mad
do that.
bars.
I do
Are you
that,
gonna
yeah.
be the next Cannabis?
Canvas?
Yeah, can you do 100 bars by Cannabis? I want to hear you do it.
I cannot. I don't know who that is. But I
Pretty good.
have.
He's pretty cool, I guess. His first album was okay. He's a good battle rapper.
The whole point of evolution, we did indeed evolve. Most circumstances and threats from the past are no longer relevant. Women and men are way closer than nowadays most discourse tend to believe. Yeah, I agree.
I
There's
think
some differences, but like it's just
I
not.
think too with your the definition that you gave before like I had to go up and for like I had to like get up was your whole like everything that you said like it makes sense if you remove the sex hormones from it then you're not going to go through the physiological changes that are going to like completely differentiate people. Like you're if men and women like if you remove testosterone and estrogen then like when human beings grow up, they're going to be fundamentally about the same because you're not going to have the increased muscle mass from the testosterone. You're not going to have the more maternal desires and like wants to like care for people that estrogen provides. Like there, like it comes down to the sex hormones that you have.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with being either one of them. And I think to hate that part of yourself, your sexual being, is not your fault. It's not. It's just like I felt that way because of the way everyone around me was.
Yeah.
But I mean that's not like what you described. Looking down in the shower and like hating your genitals. That sounds like it'd be really hard to fix.
Yeah,
Um,
like it's
so
like
I'm not saying that I don't
trans
think that you should get the hormones or whatever necessarily. Like in that case, like like I don't think there's any other good solution. But it's still not fair to you.
yeah, it's just sort of like a symptom of having like a bum brain, for lack of a better word. Kind of like how like I have tics, so like I'll like touch my hair or move my glasses around like almost involuntarily. But like those I feel like are much more socially acceptable to have versus like, having like gender dysphoria, or at least a lot more socially acceptable to admit to having. Although like clearly that's changing now with the like huge wave of trans advocacy that we're seeing. But a lot of that I'm not too fuzzy. There's benefits and drawbacks to everything.
Right. Right. I even as I am, I'm pretty happy being a man, but there's absolutely like I talk about all the time how I resent women for the things that they have that I don't. And um I still want those things and I want to advocate for men to be treated in those ways. Um but that doesn't mean I need to change myself. I want to just advocate for everybody to get treated well.
Yeah, like
Women shouldn't be treated like fucking sex monkey objects, and that shouldn't be their source of power. And men shouldn't be treated like fucking machine, like crop sorters. We should be allowed to be vulnerable, and women should be allowed to be strong.
yeah, like so like I'll kind of like apply like something here. So I transitioned because my brain is broken and not because like I want to be seen as like a useless like sex hole that's good for like sex and taking care of children like in the future, if that like, even though it's not possible to me. And in general, I feel like the majority of women and a lot of men, even if they, well, women would probably be more likely to say it, men are more likely to stay quiet about it. But I feel like women are more likely to not want to be treated the same way, like, useless sex holes, and men are definitely not wanting to be treated like blunt instruments that are mostly there to be a cog and a means to an end and not like an end themselves.
Yeah.
And I feel like men want to be vulnerable, but men also want to have a particular masculinity around themselves. And I feel like when you remove the notion of like men having a certain masculinity, it kind of gets to the point where I don't know, there's something that's lost in the sauce. Like if you like femboys are amazing. Like I love femboys. I have the largest femboy following out of like anybody on Twitter that's not a femboy. And I still like super identify with trap culture. But the main people that I'm attracted to are masculine. But I like men who are masculine but can also be open about themselves. So like the guy that I'm seeing now is like perfect for that. Like masculine, knows how to fix stuff, grew up on a farm, but also extremely emotionally open and extremely emotionally vulnerable.
Mm.
Whereas with femboys, you kind of get people who, after you've been with them for a week, it's kind of like, well, you're hiding something. So like, why don't you just talk about and you have to coax that out of them, like talk about your feelings more and more. Like,
Yeah.
it's, and
It's
it's a product
really
of that.
it's really great to date somebody as a guy who actually wants to hear what you have to say. Um, and you can it's really great to be able to like just immediately say what you think and how you feel about everything so that you don't have to hold it in and worry about it. And yeah.
Yeah, like I'll say this. The relationship that I have now is 100% healthier than the one that I previously had. One that I previously had was with a femboy, and it was always, what's wrong? And it would be like nothing. It would be like silence, and he would go and play video games or whatever. The guy that I have now, well, way more masculine, rough around the edges, which is like good. Guys who are rough around the edges, like it's okay to be that. It's hot even. Where it'll be like, what's wrong? And it'll be like, I just want to fucking die. And it's like, well, why is that? And it's like good to be able to like just like have that hammer drop and then be able to like sit there and talk for like an hour or so about like why these feelings are happening and like why he feels like, you know, work is pushing him to like feel more and more like base in sort of like a ritualization and not like allowing him to like sit there and just do what he thinks is the best way to like perform his tasks at work or
Yeah.
like, something with his family or like grandmom sick or something like that. And I feel like that there's something sexier about being able to sit there and talk with somebody than there is about somebody who is sexy looking but is closed off.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you got to talk about it while you're naked. And
I mean, a lot of time, okay, so like I put on fucking clothes for this, okay?
mm,
99% of the time I'm walking around in like panties, and that's it. Or like
yeah.
panties on like my flannel shirt.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's even more naked than naked, because
Yeah,
that's
like
just
it's
your natural state.
yeah, and like a lot of times it'll be like, okay, like we both sleep naked, we both walk around the house pretty much naked, like well, at least in the bedroom.
Mm.
And then it's like, okay, so what's wrong? And then we talk, and it's a lot better than sitting there and sort of being like, well, there's something wrong, and I because like after a while you start to feel like maybe you're the one who did it when that might not necessarily ever be the case. But I feel like when somebody refuses to like open up and talk to you about like what's wrong, my natural instinct is to assume that it's because of something that I've done.
Hmm. No, it's only something you've done in that you haven't made them feel like they can open up, whereas they already are primed to not feel that way. So like it's only something that you've done in like the 10% of the 100% that 90% of them is them. So it is kind of related to that. So it makes sense that you people have that feeling like it's me, but that the part that's you is only like a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can't actually do enough to make it enough. So yeah.
especially when it comes to talking to a guy who's, like using my old boyfriend as an example, a guy from like the middle of nowhere who was raised in like a small town and kind of taught the whole idea of like, well, boys don't cry, boys don't have emotions. Like you're supposed to be like, for lack of a better word, just a meat puppet. You are a meat popsicle and that is your job because you are a man. And while he was able to express himself more by being a femboy, he still had a lot of those socializations of like, well, I'm not allowed to cry around anybody.
Still
I'm not
had the
allowed to do this.
popsicle stick. He still had the meat popsicle stick up his ass.
He definitely had a meat popsicle stick.
um,
That's one thing.
are you considering doing that like a panel of autogynephilia panel?
If I could totally get it was the wildest thing in my life ever. I thought it was weird when Lauren Southern followed me on Twitter. I thought that was like the apex of things are weird. I never thought that J. Michael Bailey would comment and talk about how a lot of what I'm saying is generally correct on Twitter. So if I could work it out where I could have somebody who's like actually like a a psychiatrist who's been covering that
Mm-hmm.
since like yeah, basically since his book The Man Who Would Be King like 1998 came out. Or The Man Who Would Be Queen.
Mm-hmm.
Um oh my God, if I could get him to like know what Twitch is, like, even streaming and like
Okay, don't even
platforms and stuff like
don't worry about educating him about
yeah,
everything.
if I could just be like,
Just tell
hey,
him it's basically a podcast that's live.
Yeah, if I could get that, I would totally have one. Like,
Yeah.
you especially would be invited on that. Are
Well,
you
thank you. I would
kidding?
appreciate that. That'd be awesome. If you
Yeah,
can get him, and I'll have to get somebody too. I'll have to get. Who
get
could I get?
Max.
I probably could, but I don't know. Well, maybe, but I might be able to get. Who's like? Well, I'm trying to think somebody who's like very like related. Uh,
I was gonna say Brianna Wu because she's doing all this weird shit now with like Twitch and debate
yeah,
panels,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
might say you're like a gamer gator.
Me?
Yeah.
I'm a gamer gator.
Well, everything's a gamer gate to Brianna Wu.
Oh, um, yeah, yeah.
Actually, I want. Let's see who. It'd be really good to have him and Lynn Conway.
Lynn Conway. Who's that?
Lynn Conway is a transgender activist who. Um. Oh my God. Okay. There's a user on Twitter named Cafe Beef who surprisingly is somehow even worse than I am when it comes to trans takes. Um, Lynn Conway is a person who transitioned in the 60s. They used to work for IBM. Then, once they started transitioning in the 60s, they got fired because, that kind of thing was a national security concern at the time, especially when you're working on things like cryptography for the government. And IBM later issued a formal apology that like they should never have fired her. And one of the takes on Twitter was IBM should have issued a statement and said we absolutely would have. And it was we would have and we would have fired her again.
Hmm.
Um, but she and J. Michael Bailey and Ray Blanchard to being like essentially stochastic terrorists. She's spent the majority of her activism campaign fighting against Blanchard and Bailey. Especially, I feel like she might really be hurt too by the fact that it explicitly mentions that like you, you're more likely to be an autogynephile if you're like in a field that deals explicitly with technology or computers.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
But yeah, she hates this too, so it'd be fun to watch them, you know. But also, I think they're both like in their 60s now.
Yeah.
I, I
Maybe
like I like reading about the history of like science and stuff and seeing like all these great like rigorous academic debates that used to happen. And then
we
the greatest debate that I've ever been able to witness in my lifetime was Bill Nye arguing with somebody who wanted to build a recreation of Noah's Ark. So I feel really let down by this.
we get Buck Angel and also Taftage.
Yeah, well, I feel like Taftage would definitely be down for that. Buck Angel. I here's okay.
It's
I
a
don't
whole
know what
gambit of perspectives going on there.
yeah, but the thing is I Buck Angel has this Buck Angel for me has the same general thing that I feel Rose Malay has. Their positions change depending on what they
That's
feel their
true.
audience needs to
That's true.
hear.
That's true.
Yeah, because in like one sentence, Buck Angel is like, oh well, like I don't want like a constant reminder that like, I have a vagina. And it's like, okay, well, your entire website and branding and like shirts that you sell on your own personal store, like, man with a pussy and like a giant drawing of like a vagina on there. And it's like, oh well, I don't understand like gender dysphoria and like teenagers. And it's like, well, like a year ago you were talking about how you had like intense dysphoria like as a teenager, like growing up. So it really depends on like what people want to hear for Buck, and
Maybe.
like it feels the same way with Rose too.
Yeah.
Like That, or maybe it's just a really good way of staying relevant in the content space, because if you keep having a spicy opinion about something that somebody's going to argue over, then they're going to keep bringing it up.
Yeah, you can call it Autogynephilia panel.
The other technophile.
Yeah, I got that from C4 in my chat.
I wish that the biggest crime against humanity in terms of live streaming is that
10,000
YouTube's got,
volts straight to the nipples.
yeah,
The
that's the
cards
that's
against humanity's card.
um YouTube should have something like Chat Arena, so you could be able to monitor your chat without their private, or because like I know that the YouTube live chat, you have to like pop it out whenever you go live, and you have no way of connecting to it once your
I can
like
type in it.
stream's over.
I can
Like
type
even
in
once
it.
the stream's over.
One stream, yeah, even when stream's over through OBS, yeah.
Interesting, because I know that everything's been like integrated through that, whereas like on Twitch, there's like some sort of weird magic where there's so many different applications and you monitor like more chats like via application. So like Chat Arena, you could have like 20 different channels chats open in one little window. Versus like I feel like on YouTube the last time like I popped out a few different chats, it was like they all opened as separate windows and there's
Oh,
no
that's
like
probably
third
true.
party application plugged in.
That's probably true. I think I'm gonna start multi-streaming onto Twitch just for discoverability. Just get some
Yeah, like
randos in there.
Twitch streaming is really good. If OBS wasn't doing this weird thing where it would crash every single time I try to add a camera source, I would be on there right now. But yeah, but I don't know. Twitch seems like the numbers for everybody is just drying up. I feel like YouTube is probably going to be the next.
Yes. But I'm thinking just multi-streaming just for the sake. Twitch, you're gonna get some randos, and you can get raids
Yeah.
and randos, and that's. I mean, I'm sure there. I just don't see a lot of random people on YouTube live chats. I see them in the comments sometimes and stuff, and I definitely see them on videos and stuff. But it's just live. I don't. And live, you get randos on Twitch. So
Well, YouTube doesn't really have an algorithm for discoverability for like live stream content. Like
yeah, it counts as
they
a video afterward.
yeah, and so like it doesn't show up like when you I don't know. Okay. But I should know this because I used to be an editor for a lot of streamers. But then again, nobody ever really streamed on YouTube. They streamed on Twitch and then I uploaded the videos to YouTube. But the way that I remember it being explained in the documentation for that was it does not show up in the general like homepage algorithm
Yeah.
unless if you're like following that person or you're like super lucky versus like Twitch where it'll be like you could have the potential to be on the front page.
It's just with Twitch, like with YouTube, once the stream is done, it's a video.
Yeah, so then it'll get thrown
Yes.
into recommendations, but while it's
Yes.
happening, you're not going to have like random people stumbling by. And
Yes.
like they don't do anything to promote the YouTube live section or like the YouTube gaming or like anything like that.
Yeah, the majority of people that get in my chat are people I like directly found like online sort of or like directly marketed to directly. Like I posted the thing and then they saw it and then they went there. So yeah. Be a little bit more
Okay.
loose with Twitch, I guess.
I you know that once you I'm pretty sure they announced that they were going to do that, but um I think once you're monetizable in terms of like able to have subscriptions and stuff, you can
Have
like
better growth because they'll give you the
yeah,
tools to have better growth.
yeah, you'll have better growth and you can also get raids on YouTube.
Yeah.
But
It's so
also,
stupid. That's so stupid that they'd gate that behind that because that's what's going to allow you to have the growth to get there. So,
yeah,
but
like,
anyway, yeah. I don't think audiences cares too much about this.
oh, what? You guys aren't getting hot and steamy about us talking about SEO and discoverability?
Yeah. Someone said Buck, I think, does it for attention. Rose just generally, I think, doesn't have a stable, positive brain.
Yeah, no, like, I 100% agree with that, and I'm pretty sure the person who said that's fucking Kes Gallagher.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, about like the 10th time that you deal with like Rose being like, this is objectively bad. Also, can you add me to the thing that's objectively bad again? You sort of go just like, no, what?
Mm-hmm. All right. I will keep you in mind next time I do. If we do some kind of panel or something.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. More professionals and stuff. And we gotta get Erin when she's feeling better.
Yeah, when she's done with everything going on.
Yeah.
Actually, wait, if Gallagher's in your chat, Gallagher would be somebody interesting for you to talk to. I'll have to get you two in touch.
All right.
Yeah.
Down to talk to
If
anybody.
you could deal with an Australian.
I can deal with it. I've talked to Australians before. It's all right. Okay.
Yeah, it's not the best activity. But yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is fun.
Yeah. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, it's nice talking to you. And I hope that everybody else in the fucking Smith house here
Smith Lab. Smith
enjoyed it.
Den.
Smith Den. Smith Den's such a good name. Is that what you're gonna name your chat?
Smith Den, yeah.
Yeah. I hope everybody in the Smith Dens, you know,
They're Smith heads.
enjoyed it.
They're getting their full dose of methamphetamine. This is a nice pick me up of smethadone.
Methadone clinic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you have a good rest of your night, all right, bud?
You too. All right. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Don't have another stream scheduled just yet. I might reach out to Gallagher. Possibly. But I'm probably going to release a couple goofy videos. Oh yeah, and thank you Clark Cunt for putting the Sleepy's Twitter. It's also in the description. So now it's in the chat. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah. I have some goofy little videos to put out probably in the meantime. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.